John. Happy to help. Happy to be here tonight.
I get right. It was a very different topic. But Carolyn, you've been good enough to respond to my inquiry since I have found myself under the scrutiny of now how accurate it's not accurate whatsoever. But anyways, so I've been the focus of quite a detective work based upon a team that guy by the name of Matt Osborne and others. C.R. Weir has been a part of that, I would imagine. But before I knew it, and actually you had sort of alerted me, you had been contacted by somebody,
Yes.
right? Matt Stroud,
Yes.
a
Yes.
reporter that we both knew from our days when
Yes.
Crescent was under investigation.
Yes.
And so it
Right.
became apparent that something was afoot.
Yes.
So we if you want to share a little bit about that, and then what I thought we would do is, since there's a narrative which has included, unfortunately, Matt has seen fit to what I consider exploit the emotional difficulties of a troubled young woman who happens to be my daughter, who I will be putting together a timeline for folks, and probably by the time they're watching this, they will have seen some of that timeline because it's hard to believe that a child, an adult child, would take to the airwaves. Rare is the time that that happens. And you and I both, and I should start by why don't you give some of your background because you're not new to the field of mental health. So you and I
No.
worked with troubled teens. So to think that a daughter who takes to the airwaves, usually that's based in reality and it's based in out of some sort of real context abuse or whatnot. So it's very rare that you have a child, an adult child, that'll actually take to the airwaves and really, as it were, try to unmask. And I'll just use that term loosely. I was going to say trash the reputation, but we'll just say give her perspective.
Right.
Why don't I, as a matter of fact, why don't I take a step back? Why don't you introduce yourself as far as your background and then maybe even how we met? We'll go back through
Okay.
memory lane here a little bit.
Okay. All right. Hi, I'm Carolyn Christoff, as John well knows. I have about almost 40 years in the mental health, drug and alcohol, behavioral health field. Um, I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in 1980, and in 1982 graduated with a Master's in Special Education, Habilitation Science degree, behavioral health degree. And again, spent many, many years in the behavioral health field, mental health field, drug and alcohol field. And in 2007, I ended up getting hired at SCI Crescent, Department of Corrections. And that's where we met. I was hired as a psychological specialist. At that time, I was an associate. I had to wait 2 years to get my PSS, or psychological associate. I'm sorry, psychological specialist degree. So
These
yeah.
these terms, by the way, are pertinent to or specific to corrections, a prison in Pennsylvania. So what you just
Yeah.
differentiated was how they really, so they don't have to pay psych staff that are just starting. And they'll say, well, it's experience and degrees and all that, but
Yes. Yes.
anyway, so what you indicated you started as, and quite frankly, I probably should have been started as a PSA, right?
Yes.
But
Yeah.
James Harrington, who has since lost his license because we
Yeah.
had to take some steps to prevent inmate abuse after a long period of time. We tried to intervene in, let's say, a local way within the prison system or within the local prison. Um, but he was so desperate to get this program up and running because nobody had done that. And they were all in trouble, meaning the three prisons that were tasked with that, the Eastern, Western, and Middle. It was Camp Hill, um, Crescent, and Ritterford. Was it Ritterford that was starting? I think they were going to start that. Um, but nobody did it. So he had to hire from out. He had to hire a sucker. He had to go outside the system, right? So
Thank you, Jon. That would be me
you know,
and you.
right? No, I was referring to me, right? So
Oh,
yeah. So
well,
as part of that incentive, because he knew as he recruited me at the Emmanuel Baptist Church parking lot,
yes.
is the sales pitch. And he asked what I would need because I was in between things. It was after the group home with Colangelos. Maybe we'll speak to that for a moment here in a few minutes. But he finagled, he managed to actually have me jump up to a PSS to meet the salary requirements. So that's so I was grandfathered in.
Yeah.
You
Wow.
just made that differentiation, right? So you should have been hired in as a PSS as well, but Harrington was able to make that exception just because he knew I was not interested in working for prison. Um,
Yeah.
we worked, both you and I have worked with troubled teens and troubled youth. So anyway,
Yes.
so
Yes.
back to, I'll hand it back over to you. So in 2007, that's when you and I met. And what,
Yes, that's it. That's it. So for 4 years, you and I worked very, very closely together. You were not the psychological, manager as Mr. Harrington was, but you were the only PSS who would help me. I mean, you helped certainly to train. I mean, you were the trainer. You shouldn't have been the trainer. That should have been from the psychologist manager, the LPM, but that didn't happen. So you were thrust as into that role, and everybody there was quite happy to have you thrust into that role because it's I guess it's sort of a pain to do some training. So I mean, you very happily took that role on, and I always appreciated that. I don't know where I would have been there without you. I would have just been just kind of floating and struggling along there trying to learn the job because I wasn't getting the training from anybody else except you. So I always did appreciate that, Jon.
as a matter of fact, let me ask a question. This will be floated later out of the mouths of some people, like my former business partner, Jimmy Hinton. Matthew Osborne floats this. Others have floated this. Nicole, unfortunately, my own daughter has floated this. That I'm a
Okay.
misogynist, that secretly I hate women and I like to keep them in whatever way misogynists do or disrespectful. What do you say to that? You worked closely with me. Is John,
I
you're a
did.
misogynist?
Um, Jon, you are one of the kindest, the most ethical people that I've ever known. Um, there were many misogynists at that prison, but you were not one of them. Many, many misogynists there, but you were not one of them. No, you were always, like I said, you were always ethical. Your behavior was above board. So I saw you as just being a very kind, helpful person. And even though, I mean, I witnessed over those 4 years that you and I worked together, I witnessed, um, harsh treatment of you by various staff members. And you never responded in kind. You didn't. I don't know how you maintained your civility there. I would have lost it. You don't just keep trashing people. You were trashed almost continually. And it's because I don't think that they really understood that you were truly a trained professional. You're just trying to do an authentic program, a program that would actually benefit the inmates. So, I mean, you were trying to help the recidivism, the very high recidivism that unfortunately is part of the Department of Corrections. I mean, it's almost a certainty they're going to get out and come back in again very quickly. And you were trying very, very hard to uh, to prevent that. And a true therapeutic, a true therapist, what a true therapist would do. So you were trying very hard, very, very hard to develop a very good intensive program. And you're a Christian man, and I'm sure it's pretty evident, with your podcasts and such that you're a Christian man. So you were very, you're just trying to do the Lord's work. so you're a therapist and you're a Christian person. So, it's something that prison was not used to seeing whatsoever, even from the chaplaincy. They never saw what you were trying to do. They didn't understand it, and it threatened them, and they didn't like it. So they retaliated against you in a variety of ways. I was witness to various things that they had done to you, they'd said to you, they said behind your back. It was a mess. It was truly a mess. So how you survived in that prison system for as many years as you had is, again, a tribute to your tenacity and the fact you certainly wanted to make a difference, and you saw that from nobody else in the psychology staff. And the other people, I don't know all the staff real well. I've been gone now for 13 years from the Department of Corrections, and I thankfully God has taken a lot of that memory away from me, so I'm very happy about that. But as far as you being a misogynist, absolutely not, absolutely not. I mean, again, there are many there, but you are not one of them. So no, that's an outright lie. That's a falsehood. So yeah, I'm going to rebuttal that all over the place, Jon.
You mentioned about therapy.
Yes.
In a few minutes, we'll hear a clip, as it were, of a quote that I put to an AI voice of Nevin
Okay.
Hirsch, an individual that's quoted that, again, was interested in me helping him put together a program, or putting together a program on his property, and quite frankly, so he could benefit.
Okay.
He raises concerns, so we'll hear that in a moment, but he raises concerns about my unorthodox psychological manner, and he has no psychology background, by the way, or any counseling background.
Okay.
He's in sales.
Okay.
So do you want to speak to whether or not, as a matter of fact, I think Nicole mentioned this, because they have shown some of my charts, but they can't quite figure them out. There's a shock. But anyways, do you want to speak to the issue of, was I whacked out in terms of counseling? And did I do weird integration of spiritual, way out there outside the bell-shaped curve integration? You want to speak to whether or not I was a menace psychologically, as far as my work with inmates and people, just as far as my whether I'm orthodox or unorthodox, depends upon how you want to define that. But so the picture that's being painted is Uhler is this rogue, almost cult-like figure, and will bend and twist psychological and theological things toward tying people up in knots and manipulating them.
Oh my. Okay. Yeah. Well, being a mental health professional myself, and behavioral specialist. I Again, that's laughable, Jon. I took part with you various times during your individual sessions with different inmates, and you'd have me get involved with that. No, again, many people don't. You included um, Christian principles. You adapted that into your sessions. And there's nothing diabolical, there's nothing that's twisted or warped about applying Christian principles into your therapy sessions, part of your therapy milieu. And no, what you tried to do, you have a pastor's heart, Jon. You do. What you tried to do was let them see the whole. I mean, what you were trying to do, I'm sure, was just trying to keep them from recidivism. And prisons are dark places, and many people are sociopathic, and you were trying to rebuttal that and just fight that, again, using sound Christian doctrine, sound therapeutic doctrine. There was nothing perverse, there was nothing demented about what you were trying to do. What was demented was not attempting to help people, which is what most of the staff and guards, what have you, were. I mean, it was all about hating inmates, trying to get them caught up it was just a mess. It was a mess there. And you were just very, very different from everybody else who was there. And you were a threat. You were a threat. But I was seeing differences. I was seeing progress with inmates that most people thought were just, were just too far gone to help, too sociopathic to help. They were there, they were those as well. But I saw some good changes in inmates because of your interaction and your therapy with them. So no, there was nothing you did ever that should be a problem for anybody. As a matter of fact, the institution should have been very grateful that you were trying as hard as you were, and you spent quality time. I mean, I remember, there'd be like you'd have them in your office for an hour or more. And again, that never happens in the Department of Corrections. They get in, they say what they want to say, they just play around with words, both the inmate and the PSS or the PSA or the counselor, whoever, and then out the door they go, and there is no change. But with you, I saw change, and so I tried to model myself after what I saw you doing. You were an anomaly. Nobody else was doing what Jon Uhler was doing. So you were a threat. In other words, Jon, you were a threat to the LPM because you had skills and talents that he couldn't even begin to understand or share. So you were a threat to everybody all around. So that's why you were so, in many ways, not by all, by some, you were very disliked at times.
Okay, let me have you, if you don't mind, elaborate on that, because I'm thinking in terms of course, Matt Osborne and these others. So you've just said I was a threat. Now they've used that, and Euler's a threat. Now, when you say I was a threat to different staff in the institution, what do you mean by that?
Well, they didn't want to see change. Inmates are inmates, they're hardwired. Now, who did we hear that from? So there was no change to be made. They were I heard from different folks there, many, many folks there, those inmates were job security. If they weren't helped, we could always be assured of a payday. They get out, they commit their crimes, they come back. And that was a good thing, according to many staff there. Job security, job security. Well, you weren't about that, Jon. You were about helping. You wanted to help. And that's why you were a threat, because nobody had really understood what you were trying to do. You had different perspective on treatment altogether, and the security staff was threatened by that. Many. Some understood. Very few.
Can you define that, Carolyn? Like the security staff, you mean when we walked into a secure environment, which, as a matter of fact, very few people understand, and maybe we'll speak to that in just a second. That's such a unique environment. Very few people have darkened the door of that. So solitary confinement. But when you say I was a threat to the security staff, what do you mean by that?
Again, they didn't understand what you were trying to do. Over the years, you were like the founding father of change there, and they didn't want to see change. Inmates didn't deserve change. They didn't deserve individual therapy. They didn't deserve to have group therapy.
That's the mindset. That was the mindset of a lot of the officers. Not every single one. We had some actually very good officers. But for the majority of them, right? What you're saying is the majority of them had a mindset, and it was not a therapeutic mindset.
Oh, absolutely not. And because you were very therapeutically minded, and not only that, but again, it was obvious you were a Christian. You are a Christian, and they didn't like that either, because the inmates didn't deserve God. They didn't deserve, again, a person who applies Christianity in his work and applies Christianity toward those, lesser than, in this case, the inmates. And they hated that because you had a compassionate heart. Not only were you obviously an astute professional in every which way, but they didn't like the fact that you were nice and compassionate. And they took many, again, not all, but many took offense at that. You were not moldable. You couldn't be molded, and they didn't like that. Many other PSSs or PSAs could be molded, and it was, again, just a very DOC minded, where there'll be no change. We'll see no change. Hardwired. Just do what you have to do. Do it minimally, and then get out. and then go home, eight at the gate. What's the old term they use, John? Eight in the gate.
In the gate.
So it was eight in the gate, but you really tried hard. You really tried very hard to make a difference there. And you saw that there was something to these inmates beside sociopathy, beside their criminality, their criminal minds. You were trying to, again, using Christian principles, using the Bible, you were trying to get them to see that there was something more than just what they had. And again, you tried to help them toward Christian salvation, toward salvation in Christ, and you were very open about that. And again, you don't express that in the prison system, expect to not have some retaliation, and you sure did. You had a lot of retaliation, John. So yeah, right.
Now, if somebody from your last words were to say, see, Euler was trying to shove his religion down people's throats.
No, I wouldn't say that at all, John. But the fact is that you and I both know, I'm a Christian as well, and you and I both know that without Christ, and I'm going to put it out there, without Christ, there is no change. You can do all the therapy you want to do, the CBT of it all. If there's not Christ at the center of it, it's not going to be effective. It's not going to help. And that's where you came from, and that's where I came from as well. So you and I were friends because I understood what you were trying to do, and I appreciated what you were trying to do. But again, there it was thought of as being weird, maybe in some ways maybe perverse. They didn't understand what you were trying to do, but I never saw you try to ram anything down anybody's throats. You just offered it. You would provide Christian materials, Bibles, different books to inmates that nobody else would even care to do. You bought, I hope it's okay if I say this, you bought a lot of your own materials, and you would have that material brought in. You spent a lot of money. Again, it wasn't you. The old expression goes, "You walked the walk. You didn't just talk the talk." So, yeah. And again, you were an anomaly. You were a very different kind of person, and they didn't quite care for that. Many didn't quite care for that and didn't really understand it. But again, I saw some profound changes in some inmates that they said would never be better. But you helped to bring the best of people out, John. So it was always appreciated to see you work so hard and spend your own money. Again, you did things that were really above and beyond what any PSS or anybody in the mental health field would do. I mean, you stand out there by yourself. You really do. And I mean that in a good way.
Thank you, Carolyn. In case somebody's wondering, right, because some of these folks are still going to camp on, look, Euler's trying to proselytize. As a matter of fact, that was raised during the prison inquiry. And I simply would suggest to those listening, and Carolyn, my guess is, I mean, you give your feedback, my guess is you're going to concur, is that very few inmates are actually crazy. I mean, we've worked around crazy inmates. So there's a program called Thinking for a Change. Good title, nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the vast majority of the inmates actually, it's not something to do with their thinking because they know the difference between right and wrong. They need a heart change, a change of heart, really conscience. They need their conscience to come back and a spiritual awakening, like in the 12 steps and step number 4, where they do a searching and fearless moral inventory. So that's what really where I would go. What are your thoughts about what I just said?
Yeah, well, again, I took part in that Thinking for a Change, and I just saw it as being used as almost like a toy. I saw nothing that came of it. The inmates just didn't, there was no substance to it, John. There's really no substance to it. I didn't see much substance to it. Where again, I'm gonna proselytize. I do proselytize, if I can use that word. Again, without Christ in the center of anything, it's not going to be effective. It's not going to be effective. And Christ didn't have a place at SCI Crescent. He had no place there. Even with the chaplaincy, he had no place there. yeah, I mean, the whole place was just a train wreck. The LPM on down was a train wreck. So, yeah. And so, did I answer your question, John? I didn't see
Yeah.
anything. I didn't see anything helpful or useful. No substance at all regarding thinking for a change. There was no thinking there. There was no thinking there.
Let me ask you, they have brought these different, what I'm calling perps and perp apologists, and we'll describe that in a moment. But those that have decided to launch this slime and smear and slander campaign.
Right.
Um, One of the things they've recently brought up are my charts. And oh my, they've had a heyday with this. The insinuation is I must be manic, I'm crazy, these are delusional, these don't make sense. Um, and granted, I created a few. I had them on my walls and would use them very often on any inmate. So, any
Yeah.
thoughts about my charts that you saw me work on prison time? Now, my daughter unfortunately said I worked on my own business at on prison time, and then prison work I would email to myself. Let me ask you, Carolyn, can you email out from a prison to your own self?
Absolutely not. Absolutely. It's a closed system. You cannot. You cannot. So who you said your daughter said that? Well,
Yes,
she's
my daughter.
wrong.
So would that be
She's
called
wrong.
a lie?
That would be called a lie. Yeah.
Badly.
She's no clue. No clue how a prison is run and how secluded you are when you're inside a prison. You can have a cell phone. There's no outside communication whatsoever until 8 in the gate, until at 4 o'clock, whatever time your shift is over. Then you go. Then you can have outside communication. So no, that's an error. That's an error. And as far as your charts go, John, anybody who had a problem with your charting, well, I would say they're probably pretty jealous because nobody had enough wherefore enough intelligence to develop the kind of charts you developed. I mean, they meant something. There was something behind those charts, and they were informative, they were educational, and they were helpful. So yeah, if anybody had a problem with your charting, John, it was because they're probably jealous of your intelligence, and they couldn't do it as well. So right. Yeah. I mean, your charts were excellent. And they were informative. They were very graphic. People could understand them if they took the time to read them. But again, it's part of who you are. You have a very strong work ethic, John, very, very strong. And it's just part of who you are, very, very clinically minded. What does a clinician do? He puts his thoughts he grafts them. And that's what you did, grafted all your charts. And again, well done. They were well done. And I appreciated them. You let me see them, you let me use them. I appreciated them very much.
As a matter of fact, you just referenced something. It's been floated that I was lazy, that I'm lazy. Any
Oh,
thought?
wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, I don't know who floated that, but um that's incorrect. That's erroneous. John, you're one of the hardest working people I ever knew. You don't stop. I mean, if you're manic, it's manic in a good way because you put all your energy and attention into your projects. Again, it's all about helping. You've got a pastor's heart. You've got a Christian heart. It's all about helping. And when you set your mind to something, you're tenacious. You're like a pit bull on a bone. You're not going to stop. You're not going to stop. And very few people can say that. And I can honestly say that there are very few people that I know who have your work ethic. You just don't stop. You know, you I don't know how to say it, how much more I can say, but I've worked with you for those 4 years, and even after I left, even after we parted as far as work associates, we touch base here and there. You tell me things that you were going to do, and even what you're doing now with church. Is it Church Protect, John? Is it?
And
Yes,
survivor support.
survivor support. Yeah, I mean, you haven't stopped. You keep going and going and going, and you've completed your LPC, some years back, and that was, I'm sure, not an easy thing for you to do. And no, again, you're one of the hardest working people I've ever met. in my life. And that's why I consider you my friend. If you were lazy, I wouldn't want to have you in my, no offense, Jon. I wouldn't really need you in my life, but really want you in my life. So I always appreciate it. Again, your intelligence, your drive to do, again, it's to further Christ's kingdom, and you do it in the best way you can. That's developing programs that will eliminate as much deviancy as possible. And you're out there, you're fighting this battle almost by yourself, it seems. Now, I did see Dr. Ann Gillies.
Mhm.
Is that her last name? And
Correct.
I really appreciated watching her along with you in collusion there to, she's working on her behalf as a trauma specialist, and so are you, to try to fight this deviancy that's just seems to be taking over almost the entire planet at this point. Again, you get your dander up, and you're one of Christ's warriors. You just go at it. You put on the armor of God, and out you go to battle. Jon, again, I'm very proud of you, and I'm very happy to call you my friend, because I don't see it happening except for you. I mean, you're just going at it, and you're taking the slings and arrows of all the enemies of, of a person like yourself. Because deviancy is great. It makes people money, it gives them prestige, and it gives them honor. And how sick is all that? And the most vulnerable children, the minors, or victims to all this. And so I know you're out there fighting all of this. And again, it seems like it's sometimes by yourself, but you don't stop. You just go, and you just go, and you just go. But
Energizing.
very proud of you. Very, very proud of you.
I appreciate it. Well, Carolyn, we'll transition. You're kind enough to be willing to speak to, and again, uncensored. So I'm just throwing some questions out to you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's appreciated to have somebody be willing to who knows me from the past, be able to
Right.
um, these what are allegations, quite frankly, and very slimy allegations.
Right.
So as we transition, it's interesting that you actually had heard about me. And so I guess I'll
Yes.
set the stage for if anybody, so it's very interesting. If anybody can speak to kind of these allegations that are being floated currently, because it's almost like history is repeating itself. And of course, these perp apologists, I'll just use, actually, a number of them are perps, I have no doubt, but perp apologists. They're trying to craft a narrative that everything from Euler's hard to get along with, Euler is self-aggrandizing, Euler is out for himself, Euler is very manipulative. If things don't go his way, he will ensure they go his way, or he will make people pay. We already
Wow.
addressed the misogynist piece. He's like this ultimate, no other way of putting it, sociopath, Tom Sawyer, always looking to work someone, looking for those that are lesser or maybe not as much on the ball, very simplistic, very trusting. And before you know it, he then manipulates them into, because apparently, according to these individuals that have made this campaign, one of
Mm-hmm.
the things I'm all about is trying to get a program up and running, no matter what, come hell or high water, so I can benefit financially, make a name for myself, ego aggrandizement. According to Jimmy Hinton, I think it was kingdom building. So
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting that you actually had heard of me prior to us meeting in the prison. If you
Right.
want to speak to that in whatever way, because Matt Osborne referenced that he's going to reach out to the Colangelos. So I'll let you reference in whatever way kind of
Okay.
what you had heard of me, and then what your opinion did it change? And here we're talking, so I guess it did change, and that'll set the stage for that'll be a transition into almost like history's repeating itself as far as these different kind of allegations. So you're in a very unique position, because it's almost like this smear campaign, a different kind, had happened before. And so, why don't you speak to that? No one else, as a matter of fact, can speak to that past uh, kind of what was being done, and then we'll
Right.
look at some of the allegations now.
Right. Right. Well, as I had referenced earlier, John, I have probably about 40 years in mental health, behavioral health. I've worked with many, many children, people of all ages, to be honest with you. But I worked for Cambria County Mental Health for quite a number of years. And while I was at Cambria County Mental Health, you were the administrator at Children and Youth Services in Cambria County, and came along and again had very, very different ideas about how to run programming. Again, a guy from what, California, from LA, came all
California
the way over here
transitioned
to.
out to Western Pennsylvania, smaller county.
Oh yes, so they just, again, they you had different ideas about programming and how to deal with your staff and such, and they just didn't quite, again, they didn't quite understand how that could be beneficial, and I know it didn't quite work out for you very well at that agency, and you had left. But yeah, I had heard from different, because I had much affiliation with the caseworkers from that
Actually, Carolyn,
agency.
maybe, and sorry, I'm going to let's camp on that just for a second, because I'm thinking how after they listen to this, there's going to be another follow-up, these folks. You
Okay.
just said, oh, it didn't work out very well. So it might
Right.
be helpful. My position lasted a year because those that you're referencing, and it is sad in a way that the person that was my assistant actually was slated to be the director or the administrator.
Hmm.
And somebody's niece who hired me, she was my boss, decided to tweak Betsy. I won't give her last name.
Right.
You know, on
Right.
one hand, Betsy had the personality of, let's say, not being very user friendly, but she had her eyes set on for years. This was her career. So she should have been the runner up. And before you know it, somebody from a relationship fraternization, my boss actually hires from without and bypasses her. So I stepped into what could be a hostile situation, and she didn't drop it. And therefore, because she knew the juvenile court judge, it just became apparent that it was not going to be user friendly. Did I surmise that well, or is there anything else you want
Oh
to?
no, I mean, you hit it on the nail on the head there, John. I mean, you could speak much more to it as far as specifics than I can. I just remember the talk. Oh, this guy has, Mr. Euler has pie in the sky ideas, and what his ideas will never work. They won't work around here. Just very rigid in their thinking. And so, we had some caseworkers who really appreciated the fact that you had new and fresh ideas, and let's go ahead and try. What's the worst that can happen? They don't work out, so we go back to the traditional way that we've always done things. But yeah, the powers that be just couldn't contain themselves, John, and you were just too much. You were just too much for them. They were very traditional in their thinking, very rigid in their thinking. They weren't about to try anything different, and you wanted to do all kinds of different things, and they weren't going to have it, so it didn't work out. But I heard from different caseworkers, oh my gosh, we're so glad Mr. Euler is leaving. He wasn't working out here. But other caseworkers were very happy that you were there, and they were upset that you were leaving. So when I went to the prison, I had never met you. We were like in the same area, but I had never met you. When I went to SCI Crescent and I stepped in the door, the LPM took me down to meet the various PSSs and took me to
LPM
your
is our
office.
boss. That would be the licensed psychological
Yes,
manager,
psychology manager.
chief
Yes, that would be our.
psychologist, prison.
Yes, yes. And anyway, I went into your office with this LPM, the licensed psychologist manager, and um, he said, "This is Jon Euler," and I said, "Jon Euler, that's an interesting name." I said, "I know somebody with that name," and I said, by the way, were you at Cambria County Children and Youth Services for a time?" And you said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, you're that Jon Euler." And so I thought, "Oh no," because I had heard, good, and I hadn't heard bad, and I thought, "Oh boy, this guy may not be easy to get along with this quote unquote pie in the sky ideas, and just kind of like far out type of thinking and way of dealing with people." But I was happily surprised that wasn't at all who you were. You were a different kind of thinker, but again, in this area, people just don't understand. They didn't appreciate what you were trying to do, Jon. And, I was happily surprised that you weren't what I was told you were by different persons there. Again, some, not all. Some, again, were very upset that you left the agency and wish you had wished you had come back. But yeah, Jon, I was, again, I keep repeating myself, but I found nothing but good working with you. Um, um, you were just a very different kind of person, but I was open in my thinking. Unlike most other people there, I was very open in my thinking, and I had studied psychology obviously as well, and so I knew that we had to appreciate people with different abilities and different venues and different views of life and different views of therapy, and but unfortunately that's not what I mean, you were kind of victimized in many respects when I had known you at Crescent, SCI Crescent. So always kind of felt sort of bad for you, Jon. You know,
That-
I always felt kind of bad for you.
Actually, can you elaborate that? Not that I'm looking for sympathy, but again, somebody may try to twist that. So can you elaborate
Oh,
just, I
the
mean,
fact that I felt badly for you.
the fact that I seem to be the focus of a lot, like, see, Euler just has a
Oh,
hard wherever. As a matter of fact, that was sort of insinuated. There seems to be in Euler's wake, his trail, wherever he goes, there seems to be problems. What's the common denominator?
yeah. It's not you, Jon. That's the thing. It's not you. People they don't understand you. Instead of sitting down and talking with you and trying to understand where you're coming from, no, this guy's different. He wants to do different things. His thinking is different. We can't have anybody who thinks outside the box. We can't have anybody like that here. And
By
again, they
different, if I might, Carolyn, different, you mean quirky? This guy's thinking is different, is a little off. We need to make allowance, give him a special parking space up front. What do you, sorry, what do you mean by different?
again, Jon, it's the way that you present yourself. You were open, you were charismatic, you were compassionate, you were hardworking. You tried to share your gifts and skills with everybody who was there, trying to help to educate and train in your own right. What I know you believe to be, and what I know would have worked if people had just opened up their eyes and opened up their minds to what could have happened in that environment. And because they didn't understand who you were and what you were trying to do, because they didn't understand, they tried to retaliate. We had to put this guy in a box. We have to contain him. We have to contain Jon Uhler. He needs to be contained. You can't contain Jon Uhler. He won't be contained. So they would retaliate, and they would retaliate often and in various forms. And so that's why I feel badly for what happened to you there, Jon. It could have been such a good program. It could have helped so many people. It could have helped so many inmates not recidivate. And I'm sure it's gone back to, well, SCI Crescent is done, it's over now, but other institutions, other departments, yeah, other prisons, I'm sure it's the same old, where the recidivism is extremely high. And so did I answer your question, or did I
You
just
did, and
on and on and not make any sense?
no, it's perfect. And as a matter of fact, you have been good enough to say we're going to do another brief interview, specifically dealing with prison activities, the activities of a prison psych staff. But
Okay.
for us or specifically Crescent, um, Carolyn, is it fair to say that they had a standalone specialized program for sexually violent predators, one of two in the state, and you had been on that unit? And then was I ever transferred to that unit maybe for a year to head up the treatment? You were heading up treatment, and did I also do that, or have I manufactured my experience?
Oh my heavens, no, you did not manufacture your experience. When you got to the sex offense unit, And there were many, 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 I would say hundreds of inmates in that particular unit. And you just took it by storm, Jon. My goodness, you had developed this wonderful program there, and you had made so many changes, and it scared the unit manager, it scared the LPM, it scared the other PSSs because you were making some change, and the inmates were even in awe that you had done so many things in just that year. Again, Jon, you were trying your hardest to make a change, and you're doing the best that you could with what little they allowed you to do. But you just tweaked, and you just progressed, and it was just a really good thing. But again, you had these rigid minds. They absolutely would not go with what you were trying to do. So, yeah.
And on that unit, just in case people are wondering, I was surprised, and bless your heart, right? You were trying to do the best you could on that unit. There were some folks that had been there forever as far as staff, and it had
Right.
just fallen into a just a way of, well, therapy was the group therapy. There was no individual therapy.
Right.
So
Oh
it's just
no.
group therapy, zero individual therapy. So that's very interesting because those that were running it could say they were specialized, but if, right. But if I think of the individual that was running it, he hated. Is that fair to say that he had disdain for the inmates?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I would say so. I would say so. And not just hated, but made fun of. I mean, laughed at them. Yeah, they were a laughable thing. They, again, Jon, as I said earlier, there was no real therapy being done. There's no treatment really being done. You know, he'd say, "Oh, I know how to run a TC. Do you know how to run a TC?" Well, that was a poorly run TC. They weren't. There was no benefit. Sex offenders are a tough clientele. They need to have
These were sex
specialized treatment.
these were very the majority of them very sophisticated, and they all had the designation. I think if I remember correctly, be on the unit, you had to be an SVP, a sexually violent predator.
Yes, I believe you're right. I believe you're right. And some of their histories were just heinous, just evil. I mean, I hate to use the term, but absolutely evil. What they had done to innocent people, and many times they were children, and they required specialized treatment. They weren't getting that. They were just going to go out and reoffend, 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 more victims, more victims, more victims. And so you saw that, you recognized that, and you tried to make a change. And it didn't work out quite so well. You tried, Jon. You
That's right.
tried.
As you just referenced, what the one thing, yeah, I'll just share this. The one thing I noticed is there was a whole lot of downtime. So here these guys are, as you said, everything we read about in the newspapers, Carolyn, or on the news that people are arrested and convicted of heinous sex offenses. Well, where do they go? In prison and then specialized units. So we're working with
Yes.
society's most dangerous and worst. And so I walk on to find, and this is one thing that our boss told me. It was true. He said, "Now don't make any change." Okay. So I was minding my own business, but I'm seeing, aside from group time, these guys playing cards, they're watching TV. And I thought, you got to be kidding me. If society knew how much downtime these guys had,
Right.
they would probably be a tad bit upset because what about the victims? What about the victims' families? Don't we have a sense of obligation to make sure these guys change as best we can? So I thought, wait a second, they've got before and after their lunchtime, they've got all this downtime. They're playing board games.
Right.
So why
Right.
not offer like a seminar type of thing every day? And they had those mobile, what amounted to whiteboards. And so
Right.
in the main group room, on my own time, right, each day I started to offer a series on different topics. And before you know it, I had 65 guys that were taking their time. Yeah. And so that's part of when you're referencing change, is that sort of what you're referencing, that kind of thing?
Oh my goodness, yes. Oh my goodness, yes. I mean, I remember those huge seminars you would do, Johnny. Yes, you had a very captive audience. I mean, again, you were attempting to make some good, valuable change. And something more intensive than what they were getting. They weren't getting anything intensive whatsoever. It was really, truly a joke. It was really, truly a joke. I worked with sex offenders and sexual victims, people who had been victimized as children, as adults, even older people. And yeah, you're right. They would have been horrified to know that that was the treatment that these folks were getting. It was no treatment. It was a joke. It was a laugh in many cases. And the inmates recognized it. It was fun time down there. My goodness, they were running their own store. It was criminality all over the place down there. And it was fine because it was work. It was hardly work. It was, again, 8 in the gate, 8 hours at work, and out you go, and who cares what happens any other time. And right. And again, it was job security, because they're going to go back out. They're going to reoffend. They're going to reoffend, and even worse possibly than their first offense. And that's okay, because it was job security. So absolutely, it was a joke. It was a joke. The LPM really should have been fired, taken to task for allowing that menagerie to go on for as long as he had. So yeah, John. But again, I appreciated another PSS. I appreciated what you were trying to do. Again, you stood alone. I tried to do what I could to help along with that. But to be honest, John, I don't have I'm going to be honest, I don't have your intellect that you have toward your type of program. You kind of had your own way of doing things, and I just stood back and helped you with whatever I could help you with, because I appreciated what you were trying to do. Again, I'm a Christian like you are, and I saw that you have a pastor's heart. And again, it was to help the inmate, but more importantly, to help society, so these guys might not get out and reoffend. If there was a change of heart, a change of conscience, and that's what you were working toward. But again, you did it pretty much all by yourself. And looking back on it now, I feel a little sorrowful, a little guilty that I didn't try harder to help in that respect, John. So going back all those years, my apologies for maybe not trying as hard as I could have to support you in your role.
Well, I appreciate it, and I didn't even notice, Carolyn. So, but again, that's good segue now as we get into some of the. And again, I appreciate your willingness to give your unedited, off the cuff,
right,
comments, right? Because again, there has been this endeavor, really brought about by what I consider, and by all profiles, sexual predators and predator apologists, and we'll define that here in a moment. But one of the things they, again, have indicated is that I'm really a shyster. I'm a sociopath. I'm a Tom Sawyer on the make for those that are unsuspecting. And my goal is to work them in such a way for my benefit so that I can have a program. It just kept going. As a matter of fact, they talked about and I'll have a chart and a timeline to show that we attended a total of 4 churches over 16 years, with a total of about 9 months, because 2 churches fell apart. And so we were looking for churches. But unfortunately, my own daughter, and then, of course, Matt and others, capitalized upon that, saying, well, what Uhler was doing between 40 to 60 churches, he just kept going to all these churches, seeing who he could manipulate. If he couldn't manipulate somebody, he would move on to another church. Mm-hmm. And so apparently I would do that in churches and then to others. And so early on, and this name now, a former business partner, they're going to attempt to make the case, as they have now with others that have stepped forward, saying that they were taken advantage of by me, the great charlatan, and look what kind of person I am. So I thought we would start with this. You have background with this. And then ironically, and Carolyn, you and I both forgot that we had, it shows people how much we try to work, or I try to work this. We actually had almost done a program together. As a matter of fact, can you speak to whatever you can remember? I sort of had remembered, and I brought it up to you, and you said, oh yeah, we almost did that. So, as someone who then was going to do, after working with me, why in the world would you think about a program? And did I do a full court press on you? Did I have these designs to where I was manipulating, positioning things in such a way that before you knew it, you were brought into my web of illusion and deception, and I was working you? Do you want to speak to that just for a second? That's what's been floated, by the way, in general.
Well, okay, John, it was I who wanted to work a program with you. After I had left Crescent, I was feeling a little sorrowful because, again, after meeting you, I realized what you were all about. And I know that you wanted to do a program, various programs, but not for the, I mean, monetarily, that was a piece of it, I'm sure. But again, you saw the need for a Christian program, a truly therapeutic Christian program. And I was the one who was kind of badgering you about taking, trying to push you into doing a program so I could come along, I guess, sort of in some ways to ride on your coattails, because you had done programs before. You knew how to start programs. You had
Was
done
that
it
because
before.
I, like a cult leader, had somehow um, caused you to think crazy thoughts or lose your senses, or I manipulated you? If that,
No, no. As a matter of fact, I was chasing you and trying to get. I loved what you were trying to do. Again, you're a very unique person. One, I've never met anybody quite like you in my entire life, John, to be honest with you. But again, and I mean that in a good way, I have an open mind. And especially after working with you for those 4 years or so, I thought I could work with this guy. I know what he's trying to do. He's trying to help. He's trying to help what's coming to be a very, very deviant society. Even way back when it was very, very deviant, and you were trying to do the best you could in your own corner of the world to try to minimize the effects of what you were seeing as happening, and that was things getting more and more and more deviant. And again, I'm going to use this again. I'm a Christian, so the fact that Christ was not, you know, people were, well, in many cases, Christ was not welcome in therapy. You weren't allowed to be a Christian. You weren't allowed to, quote unquote, proselytize. What good does that do? Again, Christ being in the center of everything is what's going to make a change, both a heart change and a conscious change. And that's what you were all about. And I wanted to get on board with that because I thought I could do this. I want to do this is what I would like to do as well. So no, John, I don't see you as being manipulative or coercive or some kind of a cult leader, a mind melder, a programmer, a mind programmer. I saw none of that with you. And so I consider myself to be intelligent enough where I would recognize that in a person. And that wasn't who you are. That's not who you are. I've been in touch with you over the years, off and on, not as much as I would like, because I know you're busy and so am I, but not as much as I'd like. We haven't been in touch. But even when we do reconnect, you're still the same person I've always known, I've always appreciated, and always liked as I consider to be a good friend of mine, a brother in Christ. So yeah, absolutely, John. So no, I don't know who's talking in this line of
we'll
of,
find out here in a few
of
minutes.
bull, but it's not true.
I appreciate that. And again, I'm just throwing you softballs and you're responding however. And it's very pertinent. What we'll start with now is we're going to reference a person by the name of Sue Colangelo. I'm sorry to even have to mention her, not because of animus. And the only reason I'm mentioning this is because this Matt Osborne referenced her name and
Okay.
referenced his intentions of getting hold of her. And then
Okay.
probably what will come of that if he is successful is that there's going to be a repeat of this theme because he's going to interview someone who was a former business partner who made the case that I manipulated and I took advantage of them and right. And so what's interesting is you actually had a unique vantage point because you worked with one of their foster kids and you heard
Yes.
about this John Uhler. And then
Yeah.
before you know it, you and I met. So
Yes.
do you want to speak just briefly to whether or not, again, and not to be redundant, but if someone, so the Colangelos or any of the others that you're going to hear from, are trying to make the case that they were schnookered, taken in by, I pulled a fast one on them, I took advantage of their lack of knowledge, or, meaning I manipulated them for my own designs, and people need to know and watch out for how unethical and sneaky and snaky I am. You want to speak to that? Because what we're seeing, or what I'm seeing in this, is people that I had either begun to do programs with, and really, quite frankly, these are all people that came to me, approached
Okay.
me.
Mm-hmm.
Really, now
Okay.
that I think about it, they knew my background and they approached me, and I was willing to trust them. And they were the ones to, there's another way to put it, take advantage of my kindness. And by the
Right.
time I catch on, I now have to hold them accountable or put some brakes on. And
Right.
so that's what happened with, unfortunately, with the Colangelos, and I had to put some brakes on. And they eventually, as Matt said, they took me to court. And so I was sued, and that's where he left it. So it sounds like these poor individuals were taken advantage, much like Jimmy Hinton, Kevin Nevin Hirsch, and we've got a few others. So it's always this after the fact that they're now coming forward. They feel compelled to warn the public about me. So we'll bring up a letter that after I held them accountable, that Sue wrote, but then after that, she decided it wasn't settled and she took action. So there's a theme I'm discovering with people that are held accountable, whether from by myself or somebody else, that after you think it's over, before you know it, they're going to take it to the next level, whether a year later or even 8 years later. So, do you want to speak just a little bit to, again, whatever you were told about me? Um, I don't want you to have to be redundant, but I'm going to bring up her letter because I have a hunch if Matt can get a hold of Sue Colangelo, Sue is going to echo what Jimmy Hinton and Nevin Hirsch and these other people have said about me. So I might as well speak to it now. And if you don't mind, anything you want to, then I'll read the letter of apology and then show what the court did with it, with the suit.
Well, John, I hate to be rude or insensitive toward the Colangelos, towards Sue in particular. But I'm going to tell you this. I had talked with her at various times, and without you, she would not have a program. I'm just going to tell you that. Okay. I don't think she had business savvy. She definitely didn't have clinical skills. She was not a trained therapist.
It
She
was
was
in
not.
sales. I'm discovering that with the people that I have ended up connecting with, right? That they have sales background by degree. So maybe I need to figure out who I should or shouldn't trust. So they said professional sales. She was in jewelry sales.
Okay, I don't remember that even. She appeared to me to be a very nice person, but again, not clinically minded, no clinical skills, no education, to speak of in the field of sociology, psychology, none of that. And so without you, there would have been no program, period. So no wonder she sought you out. She wanted to do a program, and probably in large part for the money aspect of it. And I, when I first had met her, she spoke highly of you, and then as this transition of you getting out of the business and you separating from her in that business, all of a sudden, the nastiness came out. You were this and you were that, some very negative things. And at first it was, you were a good person and she appreciated you, and then all of a sudden, again, the change happened, and I'd be speaking with her, and all of a sudden, John, you're this, John, you're that, John, it wasn't good. And again, I hadn't met you until I went to the prison, and a totally different person than what she made you out to be. So again, you said that this person sought you out. Of course she did, because she couldn't have had a program without you.
Okay, well, let's go ahead. I will read it, and just because, and again, I would never have brought this particular situation up, but unfortunately, Matt has referenced that he's going to be possibly seeking her out. So let me see if I can find it behind here. Carolyn, bear with me just a moment if I can find it. And any delay, I'll cut this out. Let me see if I can find this thing. Okay, there we are. Okay, so I'll resume. Okay, so Carolyn, what we have on the screen, again, by the way, I'll show this during the actual recording. So here's the letter. And again, it's awkward. I would never have shown this, but I have no doubt if Matt can get a hold of her, then Sue's going to say what a shyster I was and all that. Okay, here's what she said in 2005, the end of it. Dear Jon and Trish, that's my ex. I'm sending you this letter because the Lord had burdened my heart to do so. Recently, I've been reading a book called The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren. Through this book, I've learned I need to make amends with your family. I'm truly and deeply sorry for any hurt I have caused you. It was never my intention to hurt anyone. I'm sincerely sorry for what happened. What does that mean? They basically were embezzling and they were trying to take the company over. They were embezzling. Please forgive me for this hurt. I wish you and your family well. Have a Merry Christmas, and I wish you the best for the future. Sincerely. Okay, so note the date. Now we're going to see something similar as we move forward, because what does she do? So that's December 6th. What is the date? If we can see down there, that is October 26th of the next year. What did she do after that letter of apology? They take me to court.
Yes.
Okay. And
Yeah.
what happened? It was dismissed without prejudice. So what we're now going to see is a common thread, quite frankly, of those that have appeared from my past that decided to give Matt Osborne and others a wonderful opportunity to craft a narrative. And I will submit that this narrative, it's very similar, that years later or after the fact, suddenly these people are coming forward. And interestingly enough, I had never heard from them until now. So it's been years. And I think what we'll do is I want to start with Jimmy Hinton, but Nevin Hirsch will be good enough. Nevin Hirsch was somebody very similar, Carolyn, in a way, though they had property. The Hirsches did. And I was very hesitant, and there will be an email I will show people that between myself and Jimmy Hinton, I actually tell Jimmy, after the Colangelo experience, I wasn't going to trust anybody ever again. Nevin had property, and he indicated he wanted to build on his property, and they had a background apparently working with kids in the system. And if they built it, would I be willing to create and run the program for them? And I said, yeah, you know what, right. But I was always upfront. I didn't have any funds. And Nevin said that would be fine. Well, lo and behold, 8 years later, what should I hear but Nevin is interviewed by Matt for his magazine, The Distance. Let's find out. This is out of the blue.
As Uhler floated the idea of a group home to his new church community, he recruited members to fill key positions. The facility was to receive federal funding.
Carolyn, my apologies. Can you hear this? You know what? I bet
yes, I can hear it. I can hear it.
Okay, let me double check here. Okay, now you'll really be able to hear it. Yeah. Okay.
And Uhler promised at least one church member a large salary to be the administrator.
That would have been Nevin.
Something is wrong with that guy, the subject of this sales pitch told others at Grace Bible Fellowship. He's very pushy, and I don't want to run his group home.
Now, by the way, I want people to know what you're going to see throughout this. And Carolyn, this is kind of par for the course for any National Enquirer sleazy kind of reporting is. Notice how many times we'll see throughout these different clips, there aren't too many of them. They'll talk about their sources, anonymous sources. My contention is this: if you have to say anonymous sources, you don't have any. or
Right.
or they don't want to step forward because they know they're equally, meaning they know they're sliming. So we have people from this Grace Bible Fellowship, the last church I attended out there. You notice they don't say who this is. So apparently they're interviewing somebody else. So an unnamed church person. So that's a classic National Enquirer grocery store aisle, uh, tabloid method. And it's very tacky, but unfortunately it's effective.
This over-the-top behavior by Uhler soon began to sour the relationship, our anonymous source says. His personality was a little bit too much, too aggressive. We were uncomfortable with that. I don't think Jon was attracted to the doctrine of the Grace Bible Fellowship Church, our source says. Instead, Uhler targeted our openness. We are by nature not suspicious. We do not judge. We are not legalistic. The community is largely blue-collar, with 4 or 5 families of farmers. Just 1 in 5 adult members has higher education. I think he saw that he could be the smartest guy in the room. He definitely used the religious community to exploit for his purposes, Nevin Hirsch says. He confused people by talking at a high level.
Carolyn, any thoughts?
That's kind of confusing to me, Jon. That doesn't, I'm just going to say, knowing you as many years as I have, that doesn't sound like you at all. You don't talk down to people. You don't try to, you don't try to take over the room. You want people's input. You appreciate and you respect people's opinions, people's way of life. That does not sound like you whatsoever. That doesn't sound like a Jon Uhler that I know. So that doesn't sound like the person that I know. So I don't know. That's not you. I'm just going to say that's not you, Jon.
Yeah, and you don't know Nevin. So that's why
No.
it's valuable for you, someone that worked closely with me, to help. And if you felt like any of that, fit, I know you'd be honest enough. Okay, here's another quote. So this is in Matt Osborne's magazine.
Okay.
Here's another little quote. And again, this came out of the blue 8 years ago when I was going to be good enough to help them have a program, quite frankly.
Nevin says that on the frequent occasions that Uhler would discuss the work he had done with men in the prison system, he started to get uncomfortable. What Jon said he was trying to do to them didn't sound logical or legitimate from a secular perspective or a religious type of perspective. Instead, Jon's tangled and confusing ideas went far beyond any rational interpretation of modern psychotherapies or Christian counseling. It seemed to me that the way he integrated the two was so confusing, Nevin says. Jon, I really hope you don't counsel too many people. You leave them worse off than you found them, Nevin finally told Uhler. In response, Uhler complained to the pastor.
By the way, that never happened. And therefore, I never complained to the pastor. I just want people to know that's a complete fabrication. So aside from this little paragraph, look at what Nevin is fabricating. It's very sick.
Talk of a group home just got dropped thereafter. There were huge...
Speak to that for a moment. The reason it got dropped is he was going to bring forth the financing and he couldn't bring it forth.
I see. Okay.
Interesting.
Okay.
That was his part. I was doing all the footwork, all the legwork, all the program. As a matter of fact, I just saw all the documents I'd put together for this thing. I had put hundreds of hours. He didn't do anything. I incorporated everything. He couldn't come through with his end of the bargain, and so it was just dropped. But look at then 8 years later what he says, because I think he had found his cash cow, so to speak, and he was frustrated that it went away.
Huge questions in my mind about his integrity, and questions in my mind about his religious or secular authority, Nevin says. I wouldn't have wanted him counseling folks in our church. He was then dismayed to learn that Jon was already counseling couples in their faith community. Jon was applying his unique and questionable methods. He was doing psychotherapy when the problem was lack of communication, Nevin tells The Distance.
Oh, brother.
Any thoughts? We'll
Oh,
go,
brother.
you'll be able to read that if you want.
Apparently, this man doesn't know what he was talking about to begin with. Part of psychotherapy is communication, helping people develop communication skills. He doesn't know what he's talking about. That's the problem. Again, I don't know anything about him or where this came from, John, but um, again, your level of intelligence might have caused a problem with this man. I don't know. But if he had sat down and really talked with you and tried to allay some of his
And
fears.
I don't remember ever talking to him about any counseling topics. This is what's interesting.
If he
So
had just sat down and
tangled and
spoke,
confusing. He
if
says,
he had, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, where it says that he was worried about how I was working with inmates, and because instead my tangled and confusing ideas went far beyond any rational interpretation of modern psychotherapy or Christian counseling.
How would he know? Is that his field of training? Is that his education? How would he know any of this? That's just confusing. That's what I said. It's confusing to me. I don't know this man from a can of paint, but I don't think he knows what he's talking about. Just from reading the letter and hearing what you have to say about him, what is his point of reference? How does he know what he's even talking about, John? And he couldn't have gotten a program off the ground without you. So of course he sought you out, just like Sue Colangelo sought you out. You know, they don't know that you're the brains behind. You're the brains, and maybe they're the brawn. I don't know, but apparently you intimidated Sue Colangelo, intimidated this Nevin person. So yeah, it does. Again, you're not convoluted, John. You're straight thinking. I've been involved. I know what you do behind the therapeutic walls, behind the therapeutic doors. You're not what this person is saying that you are. And there's no point of reference anyway. How would he know any of this? So it's just kind of confusing to me. That's all.
It almost comes close to lying, doesn't it?
It, yeah, yeah. It sounds like he is lying. How would he know any of this? He's just babbling about something he has no clue about. That's my opinion on it.
It almost sounds like he and I have discussed counseling topics, doesn't it?
Yes, and
Right.
even if you had with him, he doesn't have any knowledge base from the look of it, John. He's getting these sound bites from somebody. I think it doesn't sound like these are his original thought, his original thoughts. No.
So it's sad that Matt saw fit to find this individual. These are about the only two quotes. There's a couple more, but out of the blue comes this person who has been sitting on this for 8 years. Interesting. So again, what Matt in the Distance magazine has done is we've got a shotgun approach of people that apparently, quite frankly, either I had to hold accountable with Nevin. Actually, he just didn't produce on his end. So my guess is Nevin was frustrated. So I wanted people to see that's, again, the question is, so going back to that, can someone sound fact-based, accurate, truthful when they haven't got clue on what they're talking about, but when you make it sound like these things happened, I believe that's called lying and therefore slander. Right? And
Yeah,
when he
it
knew,
doesn't sound like these are his original thoughts either, John. He's being fed by somebody, I believe. That's just what it sounds like to me. He's being fed by somebody. This information, he doesn't know, he doesn't have clue one what he's even referring to. It just sounds good. Somebody told him these things, it just sounds good. So write it down, put it on paper.
Carolyn, when you said that they must have been intimidated by me, meaning that I threatened them, or what do you mean by
Oh, no, I meant by the fact that you are very intelligent, and for some who don't take the time to sit down and get things simplified, it might seem like you're a little above them. But again, it's because they either don't have the knowledge base to understand what you're doing, or they're not sitting down and talking with you and figuring out if there's a concern. Let's work these concerns out. And that piece apparently didn't happen. I'm thinking, John.
have you ever known me to belittle someone?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You're the furthest thing from that. Everybody else around me, I know who, like, we worked at the prison together. There's a lot of belittling and degrading going on, but that did not come from you ever, ever. You're a kind, compassionate person. And I'm sorry that you're being put through the ringer like you are. This is needless, senseless, and it's just wrong on all levels.
Unless somebody has a reason to do this, maybe they like ultimately the pedophile agenda and they don't like what I'm saying. So with them, I can imagine they would be frustrated. Would that probably be safe to say?
I would say so. Absolutely say
That's
so,
really the
John.
common denominator through all this, that those that are spearheading this, Matt Osborne and others, you do the checklist, and really the only thing that would warrant this intensity, the only thing that apparently we have at odds is not lowering the age of consent, saying that there are no such things as MAPs, minor attracted persons. They're called pedophiles, and there's no such thing as a non-offending or virtuous pedophile. So if somebody takes issue with that and has the kind of energy to where they're going to go to this kind of extent, he himself said has exerted as much effort or focus as he has on his master's thesis, then my guess is we're kind of over the target. Oh, and the cross-dressing AGP guys that want direct access to minors. So ergo, where there's smoke, there's fire. And the thing that Matt Osborne doesn't like is my high bar protection of minors, and he would like access to them. So, okay. Now, his compadre, as it were, is Sierra Weir. This is something that she and he have both gone after. Let me read it to you. It is, I'll bring this down if I can so I can see it. Gosh, sorry, you can probably see it. I'll just get this out of the way. There we go. Okay. The LPC, licensed professional counselor, license qualifies Uhler to they're talking about, I go around diagnosing people on Twitter, but isn't it interesting? He calls me a predator and all sorts of things, and that I have perpetrated all sorts of things, criminal activities. Okay, but he doesn't like the fact that I understand, and you do too, Carolyn, psychopathy. And because we can say, you know what? That person's pretty much a psychopath, right? That's a difference between an actual clinical diagnosis and a professional opinion or assessment. So
Right.
he can't believe that I actually, like, it's hard to figure out the characteristics based upon the PCLR, which is down below. That, by the way, is a thumbnail of a video I did, an interview about Levin, and that is the underwear robbing Sam Britton, the female underwear.
Yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Go on and look at the clinical difference between sexual deviance and psychopathy. That's a screenshot. There's some of the items from the PCLR, pathological lying. So I can say that Matt Osborne, you fit that with, to a T. How about glib and superficial charm? You have that grandiose sense of self. You have that need for stimulation, meaning you're bored, lack of remorse or guilt. Look at number 7, shallow emotional response. Matt actually says he's not a nice person. Well, I'd concur. Look at 8, callousness and lack of empathy. Look at 9. This whole interview, this whole thing that Matt has put together is parasitic, right? So, Matt, I'm sorry that you check off that. But as Matt was saying, that somehow I purchase kits to assess people through the Pearson assessments. These assessment kits can be used to diagnose clients. Matt, anybody that understands psychopathy. So, Carolyn, maybe I'll just ask you, if you understand those characteristics, do you need to purchase a kit?
No, John, you don't.
Okay,
Absolutely not. No, this is a great assessment, actually, John. And this is your assessment.
No, I'm sorry. These are actually the characteristics from hair, the PCLR.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
So you can go down this, this checklist. And Matt, sorry that you appear to check off so many. I'll let the audience conclude whether or not you actually are one. But gosh, you sure check off quite a few. Okay, we're moving along now. Okay, so we're going to shift. Carolyn, you've been kind with your time. I'm now going to shift to, unfortunately, my daughter. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because I'm in an awkward position. Who wants to, who would believe their own kid? And as you and I said off camera, Carolyn, the one thing that I would do is if somebody's adult daughter came forward, I would believe them because who's going to do this? Especially
Right.
when the reality is she's disgruntled because we had to hold her, myself and my wife had to hold her accountable for not paying on the loan that I co-signed on, a car loan. And that started things. And well, there will be a timeline, and Susan and I will work that out. But so it's sad that Matt has used my daughter, who's very troubled. She just divorced her husband, but then the husband came on in her defense. I don't know why they don't get remarried. I don't understand this, but anyways, I digress. Um, but this is just one of the things, and my contention is whoever we're talking about, if they have a propensity to not be honest, would it be safe to say that we could say they are lying?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And
You and I have spoken about what she was alleging, and I mean, it just it. I'm actually speechless. I'm actually speechless. I don't know if does
we'll
she
come
know
back
her
to that.
father whatsoever?
Yeah, go ahead and share your thoughts. We'll go back to the clip that I'm going to show, something that's so easy to prove. But
Okay.
she has said quite a few, quite frankly,
I
very.
mean, does she know her father whatsoever? I mean, I know that what you spoke at length about her allegations, and I just sit here with my mouth open. I can't believe talking, she's making these points against you, and it's not the person that I know. That's not the person that I know whatsoever. So there's obviously that person has a very troubled mind. And I honestly, my heart and my prayers go out to her that before it's too late, she makes some major changes in her life regarding you, especially at this point, John. But did you have a question, or did you?
Yeah, I'll just run by you some points. You can respond, and then we'll end with a clip. Because
Okay.
what's sad, but very characteristic, unfortunately, when somebody kind of goes downhill, they lose perspective. If their ego and anger, if they've nursed their anger, it'll become a grudge, then resentment, then bitterness. And we know what actually the scripture says about bitterness. You can go from a foothold to a stronghold.
Right. Yes.
And it's a really serious thing. And all of us need to take heart in this, that it's a very serious thing. God was very serious about honoring one's mother and father. Now, I'm the first one to say that somebody can remove themselves from the position of being honored. Think about Achan in the Old Testament. He stole stuff from Jericho when he was told not to, and the whole family paid the consequence. So there's a good example where they honored a father when they should not have. So it's not carte blanche that honor thy mother and father. There's a lot of fathers in prison that are not honorable. They're deadbeat dads. So
Right.
I'm not suggesting that as long as a father is acting honorably, then he's worthy of honor. And so we all need to be careful, depends upon who we're talking about, but if it has to be our own parents and they've acted within the realm of reasonable. Now, let's say some things went on, as in my case, I unfortunately enabled. Now I can see how many individuals in my home I enabled. Now that I can see it, I enabled a daughter who I didn't see the warning signs of growing bitterness that would morph into this, quite frankly. But I enabled their mother, and so I played the codependent role, and I think there was some emotional abuse. Nicole has referenced heinous stuff, including illegal activity going on in the home. And the question I first have for her is, what, a finger broken? You couldn't call the police? She said that we kept them sequestered. We will have, I've got picture after picture after picture of them engaging with all sorts of friends and people. And then one of the other things she said, and so we'll address it, I'll show, right? We never celebrated birthdays or Christmas, and they never had presents. So we'll show that in a second. So when someone's willing to lie at that most basic a level and that profoundly, we have real concerns. I mean, I think any of us should have concerns. And if you lie easily, I believe that makes you a liar. So Let me just run by a quick little bullet point list of things that Matt has capitalized upon from what my emotionally troubled daughter has said. So let me get your reactions to this. They've insinuated or stated that I am sadistic.
Okay.
Any thoughts? What are your responses?
Sadistic. In did she specify in what way, John?
Well, that I enjoy harming and enjoy taking delight at somebody else's harm.
Oh, that's not the John Euler I know.
Okay. If someone
I've
were
never seen anything sadistic about you, John, where you relish in the harm of other people. I don't care who they are. I mean, you're a helper. You don't hurt people. Absolutely not. I've never seen a hurtful bone, honestly, in your body. You've been hurt by many, many, many people in your life, just the ones that I know of, again, at the prison and others beside, but I've never seen you retaliate. I've never seen you retaliate. Where most of us would, you don't. But as I digress, I'll let you go on, John.
Okay. So if someone were to say, well, Carolyn, that's because you don't know him. So let me ask you this question, and again, then we'll start to bring it to a close. If the allegation then would be, well, you don't know him because he was able to put on a good front in the prison, but behind the scenes at home. So let me ask you two questions, and plus you're in the field of mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So you just didn't fall off the turnip truck, number one. Is it likely, given the unique nature of a prison, is it likely that someone would be on their best behavior working in a prison and unleash the crap at home? Or would it be that they act one way at home and in the community, yet could be diabolical in the prison, given it's a closed system? And I don't want to ask you a leading question. So which is more likely, that if someone was sadistic, would you see it in a prison setting where information can't get out? Or is it that I could have hidden my sadism for 11 years, but 5 years, us working together, but behind the scenes at home, that nobody knew what I was like because you only saw me on my best behavior in a nice setting like a prison?
Oh, my word. Well, for some, oops, I'm sorry. For some, John, maybe they can hide it, both, at work and even possibly at home. But again, that it comes out. I'm going to see it. We're going to see. You can't hide it. You can't, you're not that good. People aren't that good. You know what I'm saying, John? They're not that covert. We'll see signs. I've never seen a sign at work that you showed any kind of sadism whatsoever. And I had met parts of your family before, and you seem to have gotten along very well with them. I didn't see any kind of coercion, any kind of fear or intimidation tactics toward your family. So that doesn't fit who I saw. I didn't just see you at the prison. I saw you on some personal occasions as well. So that doesn't fit who you are. Sadism and John Mueller do not belong in the same sentence.
Okay. I'll just continue. A couple more bullet points.
Okay.
I have a violent temper.
Oh my. Yeah. Again, I never saw. Yeah, I mean, everybody gets angry, and you have what we call righteous anger. Again, it was because of what was done to you at the prison so often. You had the right to react angrily at times, but John, you contained that anger. It wasn't. Again, you practice anger management well, and I mean that in a healthy way, in a therapeutic way. So you should have reacted worse than what you had. You should, most of us who are human beings, and you are as well, would have reacted a lot worse. I mean, you showed such restraint, and most of us could not have done that. We would have quote unquote flipped out in different ways at different times. And again, I never saw that happen with you. And nobody else there did either. So I'm just going to say.
How about road rage?
Road rage. Well, John, I never drove with you, but I'm going to say, that that doesn't fit who you are. You're not. You have good sense and sensibility, so I can't see you risking your life or the life of somebody else just because you're angry about something you're driving along in a car. That doesn't fit who you are.
I dressed Amish.
Oh my word. Oh boy.
She's got a
I
hat.
see you shaved your beard.
A tractor with no wheels and a mule.
I never saw you wear suspenders or dark pants with the same shirt. Long hair and a big hat. Never saw such a thing. I'm just saying, John.
Didn't see me get into an Amish mode.
I did not. I did not.
Okay. Here's another thing. Apparently, I was often noted to speak of end times events, and therefore also became a prepper waiting for the end times to unveil the Antichrist.
Oh, okay. Well, John, you know the Bible, and different prophets, and they spoke of end time events, and you read the book of Revelation. It speaks much of end time events, but I never knew you to be a prepper. You have good Bible knowledge, and you would talk about end time events, but that wasn't your entire focus. Obviously not. I mean, you were very grounded and very basic, in your approach to people. I mean, I don't know who talked of this, who spoke
It was
of
actually
this.
Nicole. Nicole said that's a theme of mine. Walk around.
Oh, okay.
Antichrist.
Well, is that the only thing you ever talked about with her? I don't see that as being a huge problem because you talk about Bible prophecy. I do as well, so I'm not seeing that as a huge problem. I don't see why that would be a huge problem with her if you bring that up. We see end time events unfolding right in front of us as we speak. So it's reality. End time events are happening. That's reality. And that's described in the Bible very, very thoroughly.
As a matter of fact, I'm paranoid. Did you see me paranoid? She made the case that before going into Walmart, I would cruise the parking lot, making sure we weren't watched, and then would look for the cameras to make sure we weren't on camera, and then we would zig and zag through Walmart, making sure the cameras weren't locked on us, so we didn't have a predictable grocery store plan going around the aisles. Does that sound like me?
I never knew you to act in such a bizarre.
We never went grocery shopping together, I'll grant you.
Right. I never knew you to act in such a bizarre way, John. I never, again, I don't live with you. It's been quite some number of years since we actually had, one-to-one contact, personal contact. But again, that doesn't sound like you. You're versed in the Bible, you're versed in end time events, but I can't see you letting that rule your life and how you think and your routines. And no, that doesn't sound like you, John.
Yeah, another thing that was brought up, and we'll talk to it a little bit later as far as it's germane or specific to the prison, but just since it came to my mind, were we able to send information or files, computer-related information, files, documents, from our prison computer to our personal email to send for us to work on at home?
Absolutely not. Because it was a very closed, contained system. There's absolutely no way we were able to do that. Zero, zip, and squat. So sorry if that came from Nicole. Sorry, Nicole, that's incorrect.
If somebody made that sound like a fact-based statement, could we assume that that's a lie?
Right. She's erroneous, and you're right. It's a lie. And again, how would she know? Again, just like the person we spoke of earlier, how would this person know? There's no point of reference. There's no.
It's people that have never worked in a prison. They're trying to tell us what happens in a prison.
Oh yeah, boy, they have amazing minds, don't they? They have amazing minds, but they're twisted minds and they're lying minds. So, but anyway, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I guess if somebody's a liar, if they lie, that makes them a liar. And maybe we shouldn't give them any credence or listen to them. But okay. Carolyn, you've been great with your time. Maybe we'll end with this. This again speaks to the primary source that Matt has quoted, unfortunately, is my troubled daughter.
Okay.
Well, one of the things that she said, though it's only a minor piece, but again, when it's so easily disproven, that's when I almost feel badly. Right. So apparently what she says is this, and this comes right out of, this is Matt Osborne writing this. Contrary to the image of that her father projects on social media of a loving dad, Nicole says this: he never brought me one birthday or Christmas gift other than a Bible or other spiritual material. Your spiritual growth is more important than your happiness, John allegedly told Nicole. Obviously, that would be me attempting to justify or tell her she needs to be happy with a Bible on her birthday. So I believe what it says in English is, he never bought me one birthday or Christmas gift. Would that, Carolyn, does that look like what that says?
Well, no, John. And as a matter of fact, I know how much you sacrificed for your family.
Okay.
Look at that. Look at that.
And this is just one, I got, what is this one on the end? Okay. Oh, that's when we took her to Sight and Sound.
Oh, I see.
And my dad never spent time with us. Okay, but I will be showing for the audience. I think we have the stuff every single year. We won't even go into those. Okay, so we've got Christmas. As she said, again, we didn't celebrate Christmas, no presents on Christmas or birthday. Okay, so yeah, any thoughts? I'm sorry, and then we'll actually watch a video. Nicole doesn't know that I have this video because I was able to find it.
Well, John, the one thing I do know of you is I know how much you sacrificed financially for your family. I mean, the fact that you worked so hard and you were trying to run some programs, and for a while you did run a program, it was to help your family. It was to be a good father and a good supporter and a good financial person for your family. And so I again, this is not, again, that you have evidence to show. A picture is worth 1,000 words. Again, I always saw you as a person who would sacrifice everything. I mean, I know there were things you wanted to do and buy, and I would talk to you about finances way back when. And it was all about your wife and all about your kids and making sure that they had what they needed. So absolutely not. Again, well, pictures are worth 1,000 words, and you can see that your daughter has a profound problem with truth.
There we go. Okay, this was actually her 18th birthday, and her mother had issues, but to her mother's credit, she thought of what would Nicole like, and there were two options: either a music concert. I forget, Josh Groban. So we were either going to get her Josh Groban tickets, or there's a Christian comedian. Forgetting the guy's name. Oh gosh, it was right on the tip of my tongue. But anyways, there was an opportunity to do a dinner or a hors d'oeuvres, as it were, before. So a small group. So you could pay extra. What is his name? I'm sorry. I'll remember it. So along with watching the comedian concert, sort of goes to his show, you could do a meet and greet. You had to pay above and beyond, and that's what we purchased for Nicole. Along with, if you see head or feet there, it's not. You can see that comes out of a little bag. So she has already opened many gifts. Again, to quote her, he never bought a gift, but you're actually going to see, I'm the one taking the film, and I'm making little quips that come from this comedian's stand-up comedy, some of his routines. So you'll hear my kibitzing in the background. But let's find out if we ever celebrated Nicole's birthday, ever bought her anything. This is birthday 18.
There you go.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. My poor computer has to catch back up here. There.
There you go.
Nicole's 18th birthday.
It records all audio.
Carolyn, can you hear that? I'm just going to back out of this. This is for the sake of recording. Okay, you can hear this.
And then we can extract it on the computer as well.
Should I just look at the tickets? Is there anything else?
Fine. Okay, we're all waiting. Nicole has decided to open. Open.
That's good.
What could this be? What could this be?
Oh, directions.
Come on, open.
Here, June, directions.
Open.
Should I read this?
Come on.
Yeah, or the other one.
Read the other one.
Oh my gosh, I think I know what it is! I saw one word! I knew it! I just saw
Wait, it's even better than that. You got to read it.
Huh?
You got to read it.
Oh, I saw you threw away when I said that in your face. I was like, I think
I know.
I was
Hold on.
like,
You have to read it.
and I was like,
It's better than even what you think.
okay, I don't know if this is going to be better.
Or maybe Mommy should tell you. You want to tell her?
We have backstage passes to talk to him in person.
You get to have dinner. With a select few, you get to have dinner with him.
You can have dinner?
Yeah.
Appetizers with, there's 100 people that get to go with him. Thank you so much! Oh my gosh, I'm so excited!
I bet that's worth a hedge of protection, that bad boy. Little greenery. What do you
Oh
think?
my goodness!
What do you think?
Well, you guys, you knew what you guys.
Now that's going to be worth a little window washing.
Oh my goodness! We'll have to tell how many times we use those. Oh my goodness! Okay, so April 22nd to 4 p.m. Okay, so we'll have time.
Nicole, that's the reason.
Leave at about. Oh, let's leave it.
That's the reason.
So after the show, is it after the show, Trish?
You get to see the show.
Okay, before the show, you got to have.
So much.
2 hours before the show, then you go backstage. There's 100 people that get to go backstage and have appetizers, and then it's a question and answer time where you can ask him any questions.
Oh, how cool! And you know that I love meeting people. This is the best thing ever! Oh, I was hoping it was going to be something like this. I thought I was hoping it was going to be Josh Groban or Tim Hawkins. I don't think Josh Groban. And then I was thinking Tim Hawkins would be the only other person.
And who had the idea?
Daddy?
No, God told me.
Did he?
The perfect
Because I
thing.
kept saying about what I paid. Okay, I don't want to go to.
Okay. Carolyn, any thoughts?
She does not look deprived to me, John, whatsoever. She was ecstatic. Those are probably very expensive tickets. And I don't think that that's not a Bible. And that's not another spiritual kind of gift. It was something that she apparently really, really wanted to have. And she was excited and happy. And yeah, again, John, a video is worth 1,000,000 words.
It's sad, Carolyn.
You can't lie. You can't lie against a video. Yeah. So sad. So sad for her, John.
Yeah.
So sad for her.
Yeah,
But, you have the good sense to keep everything on video and have pictures. And, it's sad you've got to retaliate against your own child just to
well, is it
protect your
retaliation?
own.
Do you consider this retaliation, or because they might camp on that word all of a sudden and say, he's retaliating?
No, not. I mean, it's sad that you might have to. It's self-preservation at this point, John. I mean, she started this whole thing rolling, and you have every right in the world as her father, and you should protect yourself. So, is it? Maybe I used the wrong word. That my apologies. It's self-protection. So, and in some ways you have to hold her to task, which is what you're doing. So in some slight way, it's, to say retaliation, that's probably the wrong word to use, but you're kind of rubbing her face in it. She has to be held accountable for her actions and the lies that she's making up. She's got to be held accountable. Very sad. She's an adult, though.
And equally sad that any adult, so now we've seen a number of them, but to think that Matt Osborne and these others would take the words of someone, here she just left her husband because he's autistic. He doesn't even know. She posted that online. She started a GoFundMe account because she doesn't want to work. And she actually will have that. I'll post that. Her own writings. That's the sole reason she divorced him, because he's on the autism spectrum. It's sad. So in less than 5 years. So to think that she's clearly troubled, and you've got to be crazy if you're these perps and perp apologists to think that a dad who has been as invested I am, that I wouldn't have pictures and videos.
Right.
And so to think that they're going to use her words to put her out there and to make fact-based statements and therefore paint a picture, which is now, unfortunately, I'm having to reframe what I was or wasn't. And so it's sad. And then out come these other opportunistics, individuals like Jimmy Hinton. As a matter of fact, are you okay if we take a few more moments for you to listen to a clip of Jimmy Hinton?
Sure.
Okay. Well, there's just one quick one, and then
okay.
Yeah, I appreciate your forbearance here. Okay.
It's fine.
Here's Jimmy Hinton and Matt being interviewed on this.
Okay.
Yes, it is kind of amazing how very diverse the group of people that have come together to help me with this project. It is amazing how diverse they are. And they're from all over the world. I mean, who knew that John Uhler had so many people in Australia that don't like him, that think he's a piece of junk who needs to be exposed?
I believe those, the maps, the furries, and those that want lowering the
okay.
And, he did that. He did that himself. I didn't do that to him.
Well, I think too, Matt, to right on that point.
Okay, so this is Jimmy Hinton, the pastor of Somerset Church, my former business partner. And again, listen to what he's saying, much like like Nevin Hirsch.
I didn't know any of these people. Like, I had never interacted with any of them at all online. Like, I've pretty much gone dark online on social media just because I'm not a social media fan. I never have been. And so when I connected with some of these people and hearing their stories and their interactions with John and things that they found out, interactions that other people had with John, man, it blew my mind. And I was like, at some point,
what he's referencing is all those that I have unfortunately had to counter or mildly debate with. Mild meaning, how much do you do on social media with the little back and forth exchanges? For those that downplay male deviants, because I'm all about protecting women and children from male deviants that want to access women and children in their private spaces. So that's what he's referencing about enemies. Yeah, you know what? I'm good with those kind of enemies, quite frankly.
Absolutely. I was going to say, how dare you, John?
Okay, yeah. So that's what he's talking about. So these enemies would be pro-furries, pro-kink, pro-porn, pro-lowering the age of consent, pro-maps, so using that term. So that's, so those are the people that he's referring to that apparently don't like me, and I'm actually good with not being popular. We'll just finish up with this.
It has to stop and say, all right, I may not think that I'm doing all these things. I may not think that I'm a shady guy. I may not think that I'm manipulating people or whatever, but why are all of these people independently coming to that same conclusion? I mean, at some point, he's got to ask himself that question.
Any thoughts about Jimmy Hinton with that one?
I would hate to have him as my pastor, John. If he's fine, if he concurs with what these deviant people are saying against you, and he concurs with that, I'd hate to have him as my pastor. He better come clean with his Lord and his Savior. This man's having some major problems. Like, how dare he? How dare a pastor be okay with that deviancy? How dare he? So yeah, whoever he is, I hope I never meet up with him. He's not a person I'd want in my sphere, in my hemisphere. I'll tell you that.
Well, he was my co-founder of Church Protect, and again,
Wow.
one of those that talk about how I manipulated him. He is, matter of fact, if you're okay, just one more, because he'll go on how manipulative I was.
I am wondering, for instance, whether Jimmy knows anything, well, he probably does know something, about how churches can spot not just the sexual predator, but the Jon predator. Is that possible? Is that something that church...
And you notice Jimmy doesn't stop him at this point, say that's a little over the top.
Just need to ask themselves, because go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is people who are fast talkers who manipulate you into doing something for them under the guise of doing something with them, where it's this partnership. And, you know, I talk about profiling abusers, and whether it's sexual abuse or financial abuse or domestic abuse, there are so many similarities and there's so much overlap. And it's just these personalities where people, they take control, they step in, they kind of whisk you along, they sweep you off your feet, they say all the right things at all the right times. You know, when I first met Jon, he just, it was like over the top praise for me.
Carolyn, have you noticed, and we'll end with that. I don't want to keep you, you've been great. Any thoughts? So that's Jimmy Hinton. Does that, so apparently according to Jimmy Hinton, because he didn't qualify or clarify, and of course, Matt, I'm a Jon Uhler predator.
Yeah. Well, taking a look at who they would prefer over you, Jon, he has no credibility whatsoever in as far as I'm concerned. Again, that man's in the pulpit. That's scary. That's very scary. Again, there's no way, again, I'm a mental health professional like you are. I've known you for a lot of years. You are not a predator of any sort. There's no such thing as a Jon predator. How dare he? How dare he speak of you like that? He doesn't know you, but he wants to shoot off his mouth. He doesn't know what he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's clueless as to what he's talking about. Don't shoot his mouth off, I guess, to sound intelligent or to reach out and harm you some way. Again, some Christian, boy, he better take a look at his soul and look at his conscience, take a look at his heart. So who does he really serve? Is it the God of the Bible, or is it his father who is Satan? I'm just asking that, Jon. So he doesn't know you. He doesn't know you. So, and how dare he? So, I mean, he's a waste of time as far as I'm concerned, Jon. So, again, I'm sorry you're going through all this. It's pathetic and it's harsh from your own family and from these people who don't have a clue. So I'm just sorry you're going through this. This is awful for you. And as your friend, I feel hurt for you.
Carolyn, you've been great with your time. I so appreciate it. I appreciate our friendship again.
I hope I could do something to help in this, Jon. I hate to see this kind of attack on people who are innocent of wrongdoing. I hate to see this type of thing happen. So I'm happy to reach out and help, because that's what a Christian should do. They need to take the bull by the horns. They need to walk the walk instead of just talking the talk, and try to put an end to this kind of callous retaliation against somebody who's innocent. I'm just saying, Jon, they have their own perverse reasons for doing it. I have no idea what they are. I don't care about that. I'm just saying that I'm glad that they're out of your life. At least I hope they're out of your life. Once you address their stupidity and their lies and their evilness, I hope that they're out of your life for good, and you can just move on and walk past this mess they're creating for you.
And then get back to productive things.
Absolutely. And you will. That's who you are in your core. You will, Jon. You're driven. You're driven.
Well, Carolyn, thank you. I had anticipated us being on together on different topics. So thank you for, if this was the first, thank you for taking your time to do this.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So I was happy to do it, to be honest with you. Very happy to do it. I hope it was some benefit to you and to society as a whole, because we need you out there, Jon. We don't need to contain you in some kind of little box where you're being hurt and you're being chastised. We need to get you out there where you can do God's kingdom, expand his kingdom. That's what we need in the end, in these end of days. So yeah, but thank you for doing what you do. And we'll be in touch soon.
There you go. Carolyn, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Hey, blessings to you, my friend. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.